So, night two of this free agency has been probably the most talked about for the span of 48 hours until we get further news. Damian Lillard getting waived by the Milwaukee Bucks off the buyout of his contract. Mind you, that's kind of a pill to swallow for the Milwaukee Bucks financially, knowing their hurdles of getting rid of most of their championship core from the 2021 season. And now they're hiltering around a younger rebuild that I don't know if they're trying to smoothly transition themselves out of the Giannis Antetokounmpo era. But some of the moves I expected to happen did happen, but not the way you thought after Miles Turner leaving for, I would say, a team rival out of the Milwaukee Bucks. You get a proven young center that just reached the NBA championship out of losing your aging, declining All-NBA point guard that can't stay healthy. You still keep a glue guy like Bobby Portis. Vija Milicic, now your point guard's a bit unproven and over in a cheaper deal like Kevin Porter Jr. Gary Harris, that's a spot-up wing, kind of hasn't put up any promising numbers since his time in Denver. Jericho Sims, that I'm shocked is 27. I thought he was a bit younger. Taurean Prince. So, most of your core is just now 30-year-old Kuzma. AJ Green, that's shown a lot of upside coming off the bench. Andre Jackson, that has growing pains. And then you just now you got dead money that you're now paying off with $22 million a year until 2030 with Damian Lillard. And the draft capital of the Milwaukee Bucks is very concerning for a lot of what's going to be happening over the next couple of years. So, we don't even know if it's going to be a win-now situation for Milwaukee. That's the only concern here. Because it's not even boom or bust. Because all they did was take Robo Markovic over this draft. We also got extension on Jericho Sims. But also, after getting waived off a buyout over his contract, after getting traded away over to the Detroit Pistons, Dennis Schroeder got signed over a 3-year, $44 million deal, somehow to the Sacramento Kings that do need a starting point guard, because right now Sacktown cannot rely on Keon Ellis to start games. No offense to Keon Ellis, Jakob Vodel got a 3-year, $84 million extension deal after exercising his player option. He is a versatile starting forward at the 5 that can extend plays, stretch over and defend around the 2 to the 5, and he does a lot of good things over for Toronto. If you guys even caught what he was also doing over in San Antonio, and when the DeMar DeRozan trade with Kawhi Leonard, he was involved in that. So he had a bit of an upside that kind of fell asleep with Simeone Fontecchio, got signed and trade with the Detroit Pistons that got rid of spot-up wing shooter Duncan Robinson for 3 years, $45 million. Yes, Duncan Robinson, usually like a Spoelstra favorite, has grown after his underperformance after the NBA Finals. Sprung into like a late bloomer around the wing position, over in a 6'7" frame, can push over that outside shooting in a more versatile positioning, and he can probably be in that rotation over in Detroit. So that's actually a crazy sign and trade for a decent amount of money. Drew Eubanks over in a backup center position, because of course we know Giannis Valanciunas went to a different team. Larry Nance Jr. returns in a 1-year minimum deal. He was in that NBA championship team on the 2018 Cavs before returning back to the Cavaliers, his dad's team. Oh yeah, and Tim Hardaway Jr. I was just praising the Nuggets yesterday, fam. I was praising them. And somehow you signed Tim Hardaway Jr. after getting Cam Johnson on a good deal, cutting off that albatross of a contract over by Michael Porter Jr. And now you just get somebody that's less team friendly, absolutely sporadic off his shots, and this after getting rid of Dario Saric's contract with a bunch of youth. And that's after getting Giannis Valanciunas, returning back Bruce Brown. The only upside about this for Tim Hardaway Jr. is that he's cheap. The only upside on this. I'm sorry if that sounds mean, but like, if he couldn't hack it in Dallas, he couldn't hack it in New York, can't hack it in Atlanta, he was lucky enough to get some good times over in Detroit, where Malik Beasley was putting the under on himself, and now he's getting investigated for gambling on games, rigging his own performances to push the under. If you've seen his performances for Minnesota and Detroit, sporadically losing the ball out of random possessions where chances of him trying to help the team win got counter-offered, where this nigga thinks this is the bubble. This nigga's trying to pull a quick 20,000 when he has a possible chance of making at least 200K a week. Hey, your life would be decent enough. Now, I understand as an NBA player, and this goes for a lot of people in high cost positions, you think life is sweet as an NBA player, but just like if you're even a content creator or somebody in a higher position in life, it comes with higher expenses to maintain over that lifestyle, to keep everything under float and keeping a lot of things whole, like agents, training, travel, healthcare, taxes, income tax, property tax if you own property. So there's a lot of expenses that pushes over, and I think the CBA. The CBA, it takes a lively sum over your contract as well. So that money's gonna be drilling up. So as much as like $3 million is a lot of money, certain players are trying to spend the dime on that, especially certain NBA players over on a two-way, either than performing their way to getting a good deal and probably monetizing themselves to be making money. Look at Paul George. You think he was making money hooping? I mean, yeah, he had $200 million. But he knew damn well he was going to be off the floor to not even make appearance money. How you make your bread missing around 60 games, they had to do content creating. Ryan Rollins withdrew from a new deal, making him an unrestricted free agent. While sadly Pat Connaughton, also the former NBA champion, got over to a trade with Vija Micic. I guess that was their way of getting some depth at the one position. If they were going to get rid of Damian Lillard, Dario Saric was traded for Giannis Valanciunas. But where would Damian Lillard go? Because he's getting paid still. That's the upside. The downside, now he's pushing over to a team that has to gamble over his appearance issues, knowing his Achilles issue, his lack of game time, and his production. He's been heavily linked with LA, probably the Clippers, because they always like going for aging all-NBA talent that just pull up all-star and first-round highlights with game winners and think that they can pull an NBA title. Harden, And now Damian Lillard has possibly the easiest chance to pull a DeMarcus Cousins and go to the Golden State Warriors to play second fiddle to Steph Curry. He's practically a two guard, but because he's undersized at the he'll push over at the one, and it sucks too because I love Damian Lillard's game, but how that's extended to a winning formula, I don't even know if Portland might take him because there's no way he wants to stand behind Drew Holiday. So, comment down below who you think is taking Damian Lillard, because that's probably going to be a very curious conversation. What's going on, as well as Malik Beasley, if he's going to get an extended fine after only making like $5,000 in one day, and just wait a whole week to make like what, $20,000? What, because it's tax free, my nigga? I'm sorry, that still rubs me the wrong way, because you're a professional athlete. If you want, China could pay you, bro. I still feel like the Bruce Brown deal, and this is after the GM was literally pushing him under the bus. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I remember when they were left over because they didn't want to pay their contracts, just pushed them under their under the bus for the lack of defensive impact and their inefficiency in certain shooting splits. And now the GM and Mike Malone's fired. And even though Mike Malone was heavily falling out of the team, he still won you an NBA title. Gershon Yabusele signed a 2-year, $11 million deal with the Knicks. Absolute steal in free agency. Gershon Yabusele, I'm sure Sixers fans would vouch for me. I know a Sixers fan personally that would vouch that he was one of the bright spots out of this dumpster fire of a season for the Philadelphia 76ers. His defensive wing splitting, he's allowed to switch over on defense. You can see most of his tape over from what he did with the Olympics, except that time he dunked on LeBron James. PR is still going to have my head for that. But besides that, outstanding, versatile, undersized at the 4, but he can stretch over to the wing, and he can edge out and defend around and push over for our switch defense that Thibodeau was trying to preach, and now we're shown to get Mike Brown, probably as a prospect to be our head coach. And I'm sure Mike Brown would love a guy like Gershon Yabusele that feels like a Swiss Army knife to push the pressure off Josh Hart. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with a well-deserved pay rise with his $285 million extension. Now the franchise guy with the biggest draft capital while winning league MVP, All-NBA guard, being the scoring leader with also an NBA Finals under his belt. What could have been now was what should have been. SGA deserves every penny spent. The only upside is the only downside is usually we get heavy NBA title fallouts. This modern NBA has you coming from an NBA championship appearance to barely pushing a conference semifinals appearance. You've seen that with the Lakers after 2020. The best they did was a conference finals back in like 2023. You barely see that with the Boston Celtics. Conference semifinals. Okay, mind you, that was off Jason Tatum's Achilles giving up on him after a hustle play. And the Golden State Warriors, we don't even know if they're pushing over as a recovery and what they're willing to do, because there hasn't been that many acquisitions they've really gotten with most of their veteran core leaving, like Kevon Looney, and we talked about that before. Gary Trent signed a decent veteran minimum deal of 2 years, $7.5 million, and most of this we already talked about for 24 hours ago. But Miles Turner signing 4 years, $107 million. probably to compensate for Indiana's chances of still competing. Halliburton should be pissed. At least Giannis Antetokounmpo gets a younger, experienced, fresher, versatile center to compensate for losing your former all defensive team nominee NBA championship center while you guys are still trying to compete. And this after making 2 conference finals appearances with probably one of the most versatile, deep underdog teams to make it to an NBA title in the Eastern Conference in a long time. And don't get me wrong, Pascal is nearing over his prime that he was still highly productive on. But what are going to be the changes that the Pacers got to make to compete? That's my concern. Because they got some young veteran players that can still press over as a team. Because they have not made a move since the off-season started. You lose Miles Turner, that's been there for the Paul George era, the Victor Oladipo with Domantas Sabonis era, and making an NBA Finals appearance for the first time of his career. Losing in upsetting fashion in the Game 7, and now you're without your key veteran that knows the franchise in and out with 10 years under his belt. And not really that much rim protecting depth except Thomas Bryant. And that's practically it. So James Johnson is an unrestricted free agent. They're not going to miss him. Most guys like Quentin Jackson, Isaiah Jackson are restricted. Not really that much of a major cap loss to guys that they already been had on the roster. Or practically draft prospects. The only decent enough deal that they can push over is $14 million team friendly off Obi Toppin. That'll be making around $16 million around 2027. $20 million off Andrew Nembhard that's shown upside, but has shown to be a glorified 6-man. TJ McConnell, that was like one of the most unsung heroes of this playoff run, with Benedict Mathurin being a restricted free agent, still over a chance to still make a heavy extension. But I feel like he would be over for a more competitive team willing to bank on him for a bigger role. But he is an extensive 2-guard, but he's not shown to take over games in a consistent sense. And Ben Shepherd, outstanding. But trying to recoup from this is probably out the window, or they can prove us wrong. So I'm not trying to count the Pacers yet until we have the whole free agency done for. Or we know if Zach LaVine's going to get traded again. Or if Damian Lillard might gamble on not going to Indiana. Yeah, it's not going to be Indiana, I know that for sure. Tell me down below, what do you think is going to happen to Damian Lillard? Do you think the Indiana Pacers are going to recover? Because we missing out. Because there's still some free agents. Josh Giddey's probably going to get a bag. Jonathan Kuminga is on the table as a person that's probably looking for a more extensive role. DeAndre Ayton is a free agent after his buyout over the Portland Trailblazers. He could go to Indiana. I remember when they were trying to bankroll him for $100 million, but he is a lazy bitch ass nigga. So he might be just good with the bag. Malik Beasley's possibly going to get blacklisted in his NBA career. Moritz Wagner might take a veteran minimum deal to take over at the 5. We already know that Larry Nance Jr. already got signed to a team. Bol might want an opportunity, but Al Horford might stretch over at the 5. There's still plenty of veteran players that could possibly stick over at that 5 position for the Indiana Pacers, or whatever Rick Carlisle's willing to compromise. Or he might get fired after winning the NBA Cup. You don't know with the hot seat of an NBA coach, especially after recent success. But this is possibly one of the greatest runs in Indiana Pacer history since the late 90s, early 2000s. When you ever hear about the Indiana Pacers making 2 conference finals with an All-NBA guard, making franchise money, while making it to an NBA Finals, pushing the best team in the league to 7, only to lose after an injury, bro. That's like a Cody Rhodes finish my story type ending, but we don't know. So you don't know what's for certain. We still haven't gotten a lot of moves by the Los Angeles Clippers. It seems like the team that's making the most bang out of their buck is probably the Atlanta Hawks, still out of this sign and trade. Recouping everybody seems to be the Milwaukee Bucks. Denver Nuggets made probably one of the smartest trades, and then some of the dumb free agent signings in this offseason so far. Jaren Jackson Jr. got a big pay rise just to know that he's injured. And the Los Angeles Lakers seems to be just coping after just selling the franchise over for $10 billion, but none of that bread is actually going to recoup their team after LeBron just requested a trade. Well, that's it for me over in the DC show. Like, comment, subscribe for more. We'll get for further off-season updates later around this week and most of the summer. That's it for me. Thanks for watching.